if you can remember the documentary, The Descendants, right?
That's right, Descendants.
Descendant. He is Kern, the folklorist.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm just gonna let him, introduce himself.
All right, so I'm Dr. Kern Jackson from the University of South Alabama. I'm in the African American Studies program, and I'm located in the English department. And yeah, I'm very happy that our film, our documentary, directed by Margaret Brown, called Descendant. Margaret and I collaborated on writing that film, and I was one of the co-producers.
Yeah, I watched the documentary.
Yeah.
And I like the part where you pulled out tapes and that they were like old and you have to
Yeah, no, some of the footage from the tapes in our documentary was taken right here in this spot in Lewis Quarters in Mobile, Alabama, which is flanked by the industrial company Canadian Forestry and flanked by the railroad. And, it's still Stimson land, but the company is on top of the land. And so, the resiliency of this neighborhood, that footage and that film was taken in the 90s during Mardi Gras time, which is sort of when people come home, homecoming and stuff. And Miss Woods, who lived in this yellow house right here, or her mama and them did, Gary lives there now, she used to have an annual, for over 115 years, they had an annual festival during Mardi Gras time, celebrating their family history and connection to this here quarters.
I'm curious, one of the reasons why I was on the first flight, as soon as I heard there was this event, is because I'm interested in African story.
Sure.
And wherever the African story takes me, that's where I go.
Sure.
And one of the concerns that I have in America as an African is there's no unity among Black people.
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
I mean, I think that sometimes, to quote a movie from the 80s called Chameleon Street, where the protagonist says, sometimes our neuroses have neuroses. And that's because everybody be trying to hold it down and survive in the face of, economic, social oppression, right? That folks sort of get scarred and keloid by the man holding them down. So this particular place is interesting because of its association with, the Clotilde and the so-called last slave ship, right? And the people who were kidnapped after slavery was outlawed, importation was outlawed, and they had to figure out ways to navigate. Not unlike how people who are still living here are sort of navigating the encroachment of industry on their personal property, right? And so, your pursuit of understanding this particular place and space in the African diaspora and how it's not necessarily colonialism, but it's colonialism-like, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a lot in common with our brothers and sisters as we all try to grind and accumulate wealth and take care of our children and our families and all that. So, that's what I had to say about it. Lewis Quarters and Africatown ain't no different from, Nanny and the Maroons in Jamaica ain't no different from the Colombos and the Portuguese Brazil. Ain't no different than the Leeward and the Windward Islands where Black folks are. And so, and all this connects to, Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria, Kenya, this and the folks up in Europe, all them Africans in Belgium and Antwerp and in London, right?
Right,
in Germany.
Hey, so I don't know how much you go on TikTok. How about online? I'm telling you, there's especially on TikTok, there's so many lives of like live shows of people of American, I'll say Black Americans.
Yeah.
They are pushing this narrative that they are not Africa, they're not next to Africa, they have nothing to do with Africa, and they are, pushing this message out. They're telling other Black Americans to wake up. This is our land. We've been here. We didn't come here on slave ships.
I'm not really sure what you're saying.
Okay, let me go again. So we have Black Americans, some, not all, that push out a narrative that they never came here on slave ships.
Okay.
So they saying we've been here since the beginning of time. We never came from Africa.
Okay.
And we are not Africans.
That's fine.
What do you say about that?
I haven't really come across that conversation, but I mean, as long as folks live in their own truth and in conversation with people who don't necessarily agree with them, I think it's fine. I haven't had any dialogue or discourse with those kind of people, but I'm not going to judge their point of view. But I do think that it's inescapable that where there is a diaspora. You can say that it doesn't exist, but then I say, well, let's look at the paperwork.
Historical records.
Let's look at the paperwork, and folks have always been literate. And the Ewe speaking folks along the coast of West Africa, they have commemorated places they call Emancipation Beach because they know that their kinfolk were sent overseas. So what are we talking about here? So it's not just the written record, it's the oral record. And so there are these memories, I think, on a larger scale that are colliding that sort of cross-reference and confirm that there is a diaspora that these folks did come from. And then, let's just look at the DNA, baby. What are we talking about?
Right. For somebody like you have had the privilege to be in Africa a couple of times. How many times?
Three
times. But there is a Black American here that has never stepped foot on African continent. And what image would you paint on his mind of Africa?
Of somebody who hadn't been?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's just like folks from Alabama who cross Lake Pontchartrain and go to New Orleans. When you get there, there's this unmistakable feeling of home where there been a lot of Black folks. No, brother, I'm good. I don't need no water.
I'm gonna let them sit there.
All right. But yeah, man. The picture I would paint is not to be scared. What's all that about? Black folks being scared of Black folk? I don't get that.
Yeah,
right? Not to be tentative and just, think of, we're all global citizens now. You hop on a plane, I hop on a plane, we there. Yeah. And I think that one thing I would say to folks like that is to be open to what Brian Stevenson talks about in terms of proximity. Be proximate to other folks like you. Be proximate to other folks who ain't like you. And that way you learn and expand, and you don't function out of fear or feeling. You have your own opinion when you interact. So, that's where I think I would start with folk like that.
Well, lastly, I would like for you to say something about, togetherness of Black people, the unity.
Yeah, in unity has been the challenge for 600 years. Right, it's not an old thing, but how do you transcend your neuroses, having neuroses about your own folk, family, and kinfolk, and not to be scared. I love the hip hop narrative of the challenge through the arts of acknowledging where your community struggles, but on the same token, getting in the Dawn Soul Train line and dancing. You dance to be free. You dance in your division. A lot of what Equiano would say, Gustavo Vasa would say, we are a nation of dancers and singers and poets. Right. And you got to be in the mix, and you got to be doing the culture. And I think the doing of the culture makes us a little more unified, makes us a little more free.
Right. So, that makes me want to ask, how do we bridge the gap between Africans and African Americans?
Man, look, that ain't no joke. Right, because traveling in West Africa and Ghana, Togo, and Benin, folks are incredibly happy to welcome and embrace, particularly with university communities, like at University of Lomé or University of Abomey-Calavi. And when the teachers step back and let young people do what they do in ways that they do it in terms of engaging, I feel like that's something that needs to happen more often, but it's expensive. It's expensive. Air France ain't giving away flights for free. So I think everybody talks about Black America and us having our own large GNP, larger than a certain country, but also we're only like a certain percentage of the American population, and we aren't necessarily generating that level of wealth where we can send our kids on Air France to Ghana or to Rita, Benin, to see where their people came from, their Iwe speaking people, or their Fon speaking people, or their Yoruba speaking people came from. And I think it's sort of incumbent upon us as elders, and you're an elder too now that you've got the technology, it's incumbent upon us to make a way out of no way for them so that they can have those experiences and close those gaps and build those relationships. I tell you what, ain't nothing like going to Ghana, to Accra, and seeing the grave of Nkrumah as an American, and sort of acknowledging his struggle for his leadership and thinking about what happened to him. By the same token, down the road from his grave is W.E.B. Du Bois's grave. The great sociologist, American sociologist, leader of the NAACP. He expatriated himself where? To Ghana, where he felt most so on the eve of the March on Washington. Where was Du Bois? He was over there kept throwing shade from Ghana. Right? He was encouraging A. Philip Randolph and King and John Lewis and all them, Mahalia Jackson, but he was also sort of making a point in his absence about Pan-Africanists and needing to be, like you were saying and alluding to, like black folks being global, not just thinking of them as in one spot or two spots or whatever. Right. Sun's out, baby.
The sun. But just so we finalize this, did you get to go to the Slave Dungeon?
Yeah, man. Well, they're different, and the thing is, I didn't go to Elmina. There are different types of dungeons, castles, and so forth. I mean, on the border between Togo and Ghana is a small slave dungeon that was put in the ground that was bricked in and that had a pipe running to it for air. Right, and that's different than Elmina. Also in Keta, right there on the coast, is something supported by UNESCO that's deteriorating that I hope everybody gets a chance to go to in Keta, Fort Prisonton. Right? These boundaries, these many slave castles and ports and places where they took enslaved Africans. They're a plethora, and I encourage people not to go to the ones necessarily that had the hotels and the commercial restaurant. No, I encourage you to go to the ones where, folks aren't necessarily taking care of them, and you can still see and stand and have access in ways that the more curated and refined ones you do not. So, yeah.
So how was your personal experience when you got there? Like, how did you feel? How did that make you feel?
Man, I was intellectually curious, and I wouldn't say it was a bucket list because I continue to learn. Wanted me to come back more. That's how I felt. I was like, I didn't want to leave. I want a teaching position, right? I want to do what I do here, there, God willing. And to see students, young people like yourself, journalists, make the connection, the transcontinental connections. What the word y'all use? Intertextual, the intertextual connections and stuff. So, yeah, man, I guess I felt excited more than anything. So I can go, if my time comes and I'm no longer on this earth, I can sort of be like, okay, I took some of my students. I went.
Thank you so much for talking.
All right, brother.
Hey, tell my viewers to subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, man, this brother here, he's doing the thing and he needs your support, and he's really interested in some fascinating connections, and I hope y'all click subscribe and work with him and follow him.
All right,
bet.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,